Welcome to the Sleepy Underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. The morning fog rolled through the streets of Cedar Grove, wrapping our small town in its pearl gray embrace. I pressed my forehead against my bedroom window, watching my breath create ephemeral galaxies on the glass. The cold March air seeped through the thin pane, carrying the scent of wet earth and approaching spring. At 18, I had learned more about adult responsibilities than most of my classmates, especially when the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter grew taller than my mother's ever-present coffee cup. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind as I traced frost patterns in the condensation. A real lucky penny finds you when you need it most. How many times had I heard him say that while sitting in his worn leather armchair, the leather cracked and butter soft with age, his eyes twinkling with the magic of possibility. But Grandpa Patrick was gone now, taking with him the scent of pipe tobacco and peppermint, and with him, it seemed, had gone all the luck from our family. In the kitchen, my mother moved quietly, her nurse's scrubs rustling softly as she prepared for another double shift. The familiar sounds of the morning filled the air, the gentle gurgle of the ancient coffee maker, the soft click of pills being counted into my grandmother's weekly organizer, and the muted thud of bills being sorted by urgency. These days, nothing goes to waste in our home. I watched as Mom tucked her hospital ID into her pocket, her hands bearing the dry, cracked skin of someone who washed them 100 times a day. "You'll check on Grandma Rose today?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine in the streaked mirror above the sink. Her smile, though tired, held all the warmth of summer sunshine, and her movements carried the lingering scent of the lavender hand cream she always used, the last bottle from the 3-pack Grandpa had given her before he passed. "Of course, Mom." I hugged her thin frame, breathing in the mingled scents of coffee, antiseptic, and the fabric softener we'd used since I could remember. "I'll make sure she takes her medication and eats lunch. I've got classes until 3, but I'll head straight thereafter." The walk to the community college that St. Patrick's Day morning felt longer than usual. The March wind whispered through bare tree branches, carrying with it the promise of spring and the lingering bite of winter. My boots clicked against the concrete sidewalk, the sound echoing in the quiet morning air. I clutched my worn laptop bag closer, thinking about the partial scholarship that barely covered my tuition, the mounting medical bills from Grandma's last hospital stay, and the way our heat only worked some days now, leaving us to huddle under quilts in the evening. That's when I saw it. A glint of copper against the gray sidewalk, like a star fallen to earth. A penny, lying heads up, gleaming as if it had just been minted. The copper surface caught the weak morning sunlight, sending out a warm glow that called to me. I knelt, my heart beating a little faster, my breath creating small clouds in the chilly air. As my fingers closed around the coin, an unexpected warmth spread through my hand, up my arm, and straight into my chest. The metal felt almost alive against my skin, thrumming with a gentle energy that made my fingertips tingle. "Find a penny, pick it up, and all day long you'll have good luck," I whispered, remembering another of my grandfather's favorite sayings. The penny felt different somehow, special, as if it carried a hint of magic within its copper surface. At the college, the day unfolded differently than usual. In the student center, I noticed Jonathan, a fellow nursing student who always sat alone, his shoulders hunched under the weight of invisible burdens. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his untouched textbook, and today, his eyes seemed particularly distant, lost in thoughts no 18-year-old should have to carry. Without fully understanding why, I knew what I had to do. I approached his table, the penny growing warmer with each step, my boots silent against the industrial carpet. The student center hummed with its usual morning chaos. The whir of laptops, the murmur of study groups, the hiss of the espresso machine. But at Jonathan's table, silence hung like a heavy curtain. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. The plastic seat was cool through my jeans, and I smelled the sharp tang of hospital-grade coffee mixed with the anxiety of upcoming midterms. Jonathan looked up, surprise flickering across his face like sunlight through stained glass. I pulled out the penny and held it out to him. In the fluorescent lighting, the copper glowed with an inner fire. "This is for you. It's lucky, really lucky. I think you need it more than I do today." Jonathan stared at the penny, then at me, confusion in his tired eyes. "Why would you give me something lucky?" "Because sometimes the luckiest thing isn't finding something. It's giving it away." The words came from somewhere deep inside me, sounding more like my grandfather than myself, carrying the same warm wisdom that used to fill his stories on cold winter nights. The next day, Jonathan found me before anatomy class, his face transformed by excitement. "You won't believe what happened. After you gave me the penny, I finally heard back about that hospital internship I applied for months ago. They had an unexpected opening, and they want me to start next week. It's perfect. The schedule works around my classes, and it comes with a small stipend. I was about to drop out, you know. I couldn't figure out how to keep paying for school." Over the next few weeks, I watched as the penny made its way through the college, leaving little trails of magic in its wake. Jonathan gave it to Professor Moore when her wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. They caught it early, stage 1, completely treatable. Professor Moore passed it to Maria in the financial aid office, whose son had been struggling with depression. He finally agreed to see a counselor and was slowly finding his way back to health. The penny continued its journey, creating ripples of good fortune wherever it went. A lost research paper reappeared moments before its deadline. A broken friendship mended over shared memories and forgiveness. A struggling student finally mastered the complex calculations that had been standing between them and their engineering degree. Each time I heard about another penny miracle, I thought of my grandfather and his believing eyes, the way they would crinkle at the corners when he smiled. Maybe luck wasn't about finding money or winning prizes. Maybe luck was something you created by opening your heart to others, like opening a window and letting in the spring breeze. One evening, as spring finally painted the world in soft greens and pinks, the cherry trees releasing their petals to dance on the wind, I came home to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table with Grandma Rose. For the first time in months, both their faces held no worry lines, and their smiles reached their eyes, which sparkled like morning dew on the grass. "Sweetheart," my mother said, patting the chair beside her. The wooden seat was worn smooth from years of family dinners, comfortable as an old friend. "Remember Dr. Sullivan, the head of neurology at the hospital? He came by my station today during rounds. While I was updating him on a patient, we got to talking about you and your nursing studies. It turns out they're expanding their nurse training program, and they're offering full scholarships to promising students who commit to working at the hospital after graduation." She took a deep breath, her eyes shining. "They want to offer you one of the spots. Full tuition, books, everything." My heart soared as I hugged them both, breathing in the familiar scent of hospital antiseptic and hope. "That's incredible. It's like luck finally found us," Grandma Rose finished, laughing softly. "You know what's funny? When Dr. Sullivan was leaving, he dropped a penny. When your mother tried to give it back to him, he just smiled and said we should keep it. that it looked like a lucky one. My eyes widened as my mother pulled out a familiar copper penny from her pocket. It gleamed in the evening light, looking exactly as it had that misty morning when I first found it, still carrying that same mysterious warmth. Later that night, as I sat by Grandma Rose's bed, helping her arrange her pillows just the way she liked them, she took my hand in hers. Her skin felt like tissue paper, but her grip was strong. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you, dear one," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "He always said that real luck finds you when you need it most. But you've discovered something even more precious. You've learned that real luck isn't something you find. It's something you create every time you choose love over fear." As I held her hand, watching as she drifted off to sleep, her breath evening out into the gentle rhythm of dreams, I thought about all the paths the penny had traveled. From me to Jonathan, from Jonathan to Professor Moore, from Professor Moore to Maria, and on, until it somehow found its way back to my family when we needed it most. I thought about how luck wasn't really about pennies at all. It was about the courage to reach out to someone drowning in silence, the kindness to share what you have, even when your own pockets feel empty, the wisdom to see that every small act of generosity creates ripples of good fortune that touch countless lives. Years later, long after I had graduated and become a nurse practitioner, working alongside my mother in the same hospital where she had started as a young nurse, people in Cedar Grove would sometimes talk about the mysterious lucky penny that seemed to appear exactly when someone needed it most. They said it carried a special warmth, and that good fortune followed wherever it went. On the day I finally earned my doctorate in nursing practice, I found myself back in Grandpa Patrick's study, now preserved exactly as he had left it. The leather armchair still held the impression of his presence, and if I closed my eyes, I could almost smell the lingering traces of pipe tobacco and peppermint. As I stood there, holding my diploma, a glint of copper caught my eye from the depths of the chair's cushion. With trembling fingers, I reached down and pulled out a penny, warm to the touch as if it had been held in someone's hand just moments before. And there, in the fading light of evening, I could have sworn I heard my grandfather's gentle laugh, felt the brush of his hand against my cheek, and understood at last that the greatest luck of all was the love that connected hearts across time, space, and even the thin veil between this world and the next. That night, as I placed the penny on my grandfather's old desk, I smiled, knowing that its journey wasn't over. It was just waiting for the next person who needed a reminder that magic still existed in the world and that sometimes the most powerful kind of luck is the kind you give away. Raindrops kissed the worn cobblestones of Dublin's ancient streets, releasing the earthy perfume of wet stone that mingled with the yeasty aroma of fresh-baked soda bread wafting from nearby bakeries. I pulled my wool coat tighter against the March chill, the heavy parchment of another rejection letter weighing down my pocket like a stone. The evening streets hummed with St. Patrick's Day revelry. Tin whistles and bodhran drums echoed from pub doorways, while strings of green fairy lights twinkled against the deepening twilight sky. The celebrations felt distant to me, as though I watched the world through a rain-streaked window, separate from the joy around me. At 23, my carefully plotted life map had crumbled. Graduate with honors in business administration, secure a position at one of Dublin's top firms, make my parents proud. These goals had been my North Star since childhood. My mother and father had poured their savings into my education, working double shifts at their small grocery store to give me opportunities they never had. Now, 6 months of rejection letters mocked my dreams. The drizzle softened to a gossamer mist as my feet carried me away from the main thoroughfare. The sounds of celebration faded, replaced by the gentle tap of water dropping from the eaves and the whisper of my footsteps against the stone. A sound came that stopped me mid-stride. music unlike anything I'd ever heard. The melody floated on the evening air, a tune that spoke of ancient hills draped in the morning fog, of fairy rings hidden in moonlit forests, of dreams lost and found again. It pulled at something deep within my chest, calling to a part of my soul I hadn't known existed. Following the ethereal sound, I found myself in a narrow alley I could have sworn hadn't been there moments before. Gaslight from an old iron lamp cast a golden sphere in the mist, illuminating an elderly man in an emerald green cap. His gnarled hands moved across a fiddle with otherworldly grace, creating music that made my heart ache with its beauty. The old man's eyes, when they met mine, held the deep green of Irish valleys and something more, a glimmer of ancient wisdom that seemed to peer straight into my troubled soul. "Music finds those who need it most," he said, lowering his fiddle. His voice carried the warm, rich timbre of well-aged whiskey, with an accent that spoke of Ireland's oldest hills. "I've never heard anything like it," I breathed, drawn closer by an invisible thread. The scent of heather and peat smoke clung to the old man, though no fire burned nearby. "You're carrying quite a weight these days," the elderly man observed, nodding toward the letter in my pocket. His fingers, though twisted with age, moved across the fiddle strings with impossible dexterity. I touched the rejection letter, its edges soft from repeated handling. "That obvious, is it?" To eyes that have seen centuries turn, clear as moonlight on water, the fiddler set his instrument down with tender care, reaching into a vest that seemed woven from shamrock green shadows. "You remind me of myself long ago. So certain of the proper path, never dreaming that life's greatest treasures often hide down wandering roads." From his pocket, he drew a coin that captured and held the lamplight like a piece of fallen sun. Larger than any coin I had seen, its surface bore intricate Celtic knots that seemed to shift and flow like living things. The metal felt warm against my palm when the old man pressed it into my hand. "Here's what we'll do, young Declan," the fiddler said, his eyes twinkling like stars reflected in a wishing well. "Flip this coin. Heads, you follow your planned path. Tails, you open your heart to new dreams." As I prepared to flip the coin, the old man added softly, "But remember, sometimes the bravest choice is refusing to let chance decide your fate." The coin spun through the misty air, catching the gaslight like a miniature sun. When it landed, it did something impossible. It balanced perfectly on its edge, neither heads nor tails showing. The metal hummed against the cobblestones with a musical note that harmonized with the lingering echo of the fiddle. The old man's laughter rippled through the alley like bells on a spring morning. "Well now, isn't that telling? Perhaps the universe herself has opinions about your future." My eyes widened. "How did you know my—" But the space where the fiddler had stood was empty, filled only with swirling mist and the fading notes of impossible music. The coin had vanished too, though its warmth lingered in my palm. That night, I dreamed of music that shaped wood into living things, of hands that created beauty from raw possibility. I woke with memories of my grandmother's workshop, where I'd spent countless childhood hours learning to craft simple toys and treasures. The scent of sawdust and lemon oil had been my first perfume, the grain of wood my first language. The next morning, something pulled me toward Blackbird Lane, where a furniture workshop had caught my eye many times before. Through the window, I watched artisans transform raw lumber into pieces that would become family heirlooms. The door chimes tinkled as I entered, filling my nose with the familiar embrace of fresh-cut oak and pine. The workshop's owner, Maeve Byrne, looked up from her workbench. Her copper-red curls were swept back with a bandana, and her eyes held the deep brown of polished walnut. Sawdust dotted her cheeks as she assessed me with quiet intensity. When I explained my situation and asked about apprenticeships, Maeve's expression remained carefully neutral. "Show me what your hands remember," she challenged, leading me to a workbench scattered with tools that felt like old friends in my grip. Hours melted away as I lost myself in the meditation of woodworking. My hands recalled skills I thought I'd forgotten, dancing across grain and shape until a small jewelry box emerged, its surfaces smooth as silk, its joints fitting together like poetry. When I finished, Maeve studied my work with the critical eye of a master artisan before her face softened into approval. "Your hands speak the language of wood," she said simply. "I've been looking for an apprentice who understands that furniture isn't just functional, it's art that lives in people's homes, witnessing their stories." The seasons turned like pages in a well-loved book as I discovered my true calling. Under Maeve's mentorship, I learned to create pieces that balanced beauty with purpose. My parents, after their initial surprise, recognized the light that now burned in their son's eyes, the same passion they felt for their own work, serving their community through the grocery store. Maeve proved to be more than a teacher. Her creativity challenged me to push boundaries I didn't know existed. We worked in comfortable synchronicity, our conversations flowing like water over stones, each day revealing new facets of our growing connection. Love bloomed between us, as gradually and naturally as a tree taking root, nurtured by shared passion and understanding. One autumn evening, as golden light slanted through the workshop's dusty windows, Maeve discovered a small box on her bench. Unlike my first creation, this one told a story in its design, Celtic knots flowing into the grain of the wood, as if they had grown there naturally. Inside, cushioned on velvet the color of moss, lay a ring I had crafted through countless secret hours. The band combined silver and ancient bog oak, twining together like two lives becoming one. "I thought I knew my path," I said softly, taking her hand. "But sometimes the greatest gifts come when we dare to wander." Maeve's eyes shimmered like sunlight through honey as she squeezed my hand, our future stretching before us like a road of infinite possibility. Years passed, and our workshop became known throughout Ireland for pieces that seemed to hold a touch of magic in their making. Our home above the shop was filled with the sound of children's laughter and the steady rhythm of creation below. Every piece we crafted carried a small maker's mark, a coin balanced on its edge, a tribute to the night that changed everything. Each St. Patrick's Day, I tell our children about the mysterious fiddler and the magical coin. "But where did the coin go, Da?" they ask, their eyes wide with wonder. I smile, remembering the warmth that had lingered in my palm that misty evening. Back to its owner, I expect, a certain leprechaun who wanders the world, helping lost souls find their way home. On quiet evenings, when the workshop lies silent and Dublin's streets are painted in twilight watercolors, I sometimes catch the distant strain of fiddle music drifting through the mist. In those moments, I hold Maeve close, grateful for the courage to follow an unexpected path that led me not to the future I'd planned, but to the one that had been waiting for me all along. For in the end, the truest magic wasn't in the coin, or even the mysterious fiddler. It was in learning to trust the wisdom of my heart. Sometimes life's most precious gifts arrive disguised as detours, leading us not to the destination we imagined, but to the one where our souls can finally dance to their own perfect melody. The scent of rain-soaked earth rose from the garden as I knelt among my grandmother's prized roses, their velvet petals heavy with morning dew. A chorus of blackbirds sang from the weathered stone wall, their melodies intertwining with the distant toll of church bells. My fingers trembled as I pulled another weed, the cool soil crumbling beneath my gardening gloves. In just 3 hours, I would step through the polished oak doors of Dublin's prestigious Macaulay Gallery as their new junior curator. The thought sent a flutter of anxiety through my chest, like trapped moths beating against glass. After 6 months of rejections in London's cutthroat art scene, this position felt like my last chance to prove myself in the world I loved. "Mind the roses, love," my grandmother Margaret called, her soft Irish lilt carrying on the misty air. She stood nearby, silver hair gleaming in the weak spring sunshine, pruning shears moving with practiced grace among the thorny stems. They're particular about their space, just like some people we know. The gentle teasing in her voice made my tight shoulders relax slightly. At 26, I had the credentials that should have made me confident. A master's degree in art history from Trinity College, prestigious internships at the British Museum and the Louvre, and glowing recommendations that spoke of my keen eye and deep understanding of contemporary art. Yet uncertainty clung to me like morning fog, obscuring my view of my worth. The damp silk of spiderwebs brushed my cheeks as I leaned deeper into the rosebush, careful not to snag my cream blouse on the thorns. 3 months had passed since I'd fled London's gleaming towers for the embrace of my grandmother's cottage in the Dublin suburbs, seeking refuge in the familiar rhythms of home. "Gran," I began, watching a ladybird make its way across a leaf. "What if they realize they made a mistake? What if I freeze during tours or damage something priceless or—" "Look here," Gran interrupted, pointing to something nestled between the rose's gnarled canes. "What do you see?" I leaned closer, the rose's honeyed perfume enveloping me as I brushed aside leaves still beaded with dew. There, catching the strengthening sunlight like a fallen star, sat a 4-leaf clover unlike any I had ever seen. Its leaves shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence, as though they had been spun from moonlight and morning mist. Even the air around it seemed to pulse with gentle energy. "Go on," Gran encouraged, her blue eyes twinkling like sunstruck sapphires. "It's calling to you." With trembling fingers, I plucked the clover. The moment my skin touched its delicate stem, warmth bloomed in my fingertips and flowed through my body, bringing with it a clarity I had never known. The garden suddenly seemed sharper, more vivid, the roses red deeper and richer, the ivies green more brilliant, the very air itself charged with possibility. "That's a rare one, lass," Gran said softly, her voice carrying the weight of ancient secrets. "Keep it close. Magic has a way of finding those who need it most, especially on St. Patrick's Day." She touched my cheek with soil-warmed fingers. "The old ways aren't all gone from Ireland, you know. Sometimes they're just waiting for the right moment to shine." I carefully tucked the clover into my jacket pocket, feeling its gentle warmth against my heart. "But Gran, you always say magic isn't real. You tell the neighborhood children not to waste time hunting leprechauns." Gran's laugh rang out like silver bells in the morning air, startling a robin from its perch. "I say many things, dear one. The trick is knowing which to believe." She turned back to her roses, humming an old Irish ballad that seemed to make the flowers lean toward her. That evening, as I walked through Dublin's winding streets toward my flat, the city felt different. The usual cacophony of traffic and chatter had transformed into a symphony. Street musicians playing the Fields of Athenry on worn fiddles, the clip-clop of tourist-laden carriages on cobblestones, the melodic murmur of conversation spilling from pub doorways. Even the air felt supercharged, carrying the mingled aromas of fresh-baked soda bread, rich coffee, and the first blooms of spring. I paused outside the old library pub, drawn by a warm glow spilling from its stained glass windows. Through the wavy panes, I saw him, Liam O'Connor, the gallery's head curator, and my new boss. He sat alone at a corner table, his dark curls falling across his forehead as he bent over a book, his long fingers wrapped around a half-empty pint of Guinness. The sight of him sent a different kind of warmth spreading through my chest as I remembered our interview 3 weeks ago, the way his green eyes had brightened when I discussed my thesis on the evolution of Celtic symbolism in modern Irish art. Before doubt could root my feet to the pavement, I pushed open the heavy oak door. The pub's atmosphere embraced me. Warmth from the peat fire, the rich scent of coffee and fresh bread, the soft notes of a violin playing somewhere in the back room. Conversations hummed like bees in summer, creating a cocoon of comfortable sound. "Mind if I join you?" The words left my mouth with surprising ease as I stood beside Liam's table, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne, something woodsy and clean. He looked up, surprise and pleasure washing across his features like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Bridget, please sit." He gestured to the worn leather chair across from him, closing his book, a tome on contemporary sculpture. "I was just reading about the piece we're receiving next week. Perfect timing, actually. I'd love your thoughts on where to display it." As we talked, the usual knot of anxiety in my chest unraveled. Words flowed between us, carrying our shared passion for art, our love of Irish folklore, and our belief in the power of beauty to transform lives. When Liam smiled at my suggestion about incorporating local artists into the gallery's permanent collection, the warmth in his eyes made me feel as though I could touch the stars. The next morning, I moved through the gallery's hallowed halls with newfound grace. My voice rang clear and confident as I led tours, sharing stories that brought each piece to life. My hands stayed steady as I handled precious artifacts, and my creative vision sparked excitement when I proposed an innovative layout for the upcoming exhibition. Liam worked beside me throughout the day, our natural rhythm making the hours dance past. Days flowed into weeks, each one bringing new discoveries. Liam and I began taking our lunch breaks in St. Stephen's Green, sharing homemade sandwiches and dreams as ducks waddled past our favorite bench. Sometimes our fingers brushed as we reached for our coffee cups, sending shivers of electricity racing along my skin. I learned that he played the fiddle, that his mother had been a painter, and that he could recite Yeats from memory. One evening, as we worked late cataloging new acquisitions, the gallery quiet except for our soft footsteps and the gentle hum of the climate control systems, Liam turned to me. The warm gallery lights caught the gold flecks in his eyes as he spoke. "There's something different about you, Bridget. You shine like you've caught starlight in your soul." My hand flew to my jacket pocket, seeking the reassuring touch of the clover, and found nothing. Panic fluttered in my chest as I searched my clothing, my bag, my desk. The magical charm that had given me such confidence was gone. "Is everything all right?" Liam asked, his warm hand coming to rest on my arm. The touch sent tingles of awareness dancing across my skin. I looked up into his concerned face and suddenly realized nothing had changed. The confidence that had been growing within me remained steady and strong. The clover's disappearance hadn't diminished my ability to speak my mind, to do my job with excellence, to connect with others, to connect with him. "Yes," I whispered, understanding blooming in my heart. "Everything is perfect." That weekend, I returned to my grandmother's garden. Gran was already there, her practiced hands guiding climbing roses along the trellises. The morning air was sweet with the scent of fresh earth and brewing tea from the cottage's open kitchen window. "I lost the clover," I admitted, kneeling beside her in the soft grass. A gentle breeze carried the sound of wind chimes from the cottage porch, their crystal notes blending with birdsong. Gran smiled, sunlight catching the silver in her hair like morning frost. "Did you now? And what did you find instead?" I thought about the past weeks, about the confidence that now flowed through my veins like sunlight through stained glass, about the way Liam's eyes followed me when I spoke about art, about the dreams that no longer seemed to hover just beyond my reach. "Myself," I answered simply, feeling the truth of it settle in my bones like a blessing. "You see, love." Gran reached out and squeezed my hand, her skin warm and soft as rose petals. "The magic was never in the clover. It was in you all along. Sometimes we just need a little reminder to believe in ourselves." Later that day, I met Liam at the National Museum. As we walked through the ancient artifacts section, our hands found one another, our fingers intertwining. We paused before a display of Celtic jewelry, the gold pieces gleaming under soft lights like captured stars. "You know," Liam said, his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that sent shivers up my arm. "There's an old Irish saying that when you find your truth, magic follows." I smiled, feeling the steady warmth of his hand in mine, the strong beating of my heart, the absolute certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I think I'm starting to understand what that means. Above us, the museum's skylight caught the late afternoon sun, casting a rainbow of colors across the marble floor. And there, in the dance of light and shadow, I could have sworn I saw the shimmer of clover leaves twinkling like green stars fallen to earth. But I didn't need to look twice. I knew now that the real magic wasn't in lucky charms or ancient artifacts. It was in the way Liam's eyes crinkled when he smiled at me. It was in my grandmother's gentle wisdom. It was in the strength I had carried within myself all along, waiting to be discovered. As we left the museum hand in hand, stepping into the golden evening light, I felt the last traces of self-doubt fall away like autumn leaves in the wind. Ahead lay countless possibilities, countless adventures, countless moments to shine, and I was ready for them all. For I had finally learned the greatest magic of all, to believe in myself, just as I was, without the need for charms or luck or anything but my own true heart.